Morning, everybody. Here today to talk about AOSP device management. I think I've talked about this more and more on a more frequent and increasing basis as we've gotten closer. We've gone through and we've released all but I think one OEM's firmware now to manual updates in Teams Admin Center. So we are in a really good spot. We've had several 100,000 devices actually already migrated to AOSP device management as well, which I'm actually fairly impressed by because they've all been manual updates thus far. So seeing the news and seeing folks that have actually gone through and updated it and updated their devices and tested and validated and made sure that they've gotten successful migrations there has been great. So everybody is off to the races and we're moving. But I'm going to take the time today to cover the entire journey just for sake of making sure that everyone is on the same page. Everyone knows what capabilities and what is coming with this migration. And then I'm going to add in all of the important new details about, hey, automatic updates is starting today. So if you have devices that are in the validation ring, please make sure that you're aware that automatic update starts today, May 15th. And I'll walk through kind of what that looks like in detail, but this is perfect timing to just do an overarching refresher and then dive into some very specific details and make sure I call out the important intricacies as we start rolling through conversations here. But overarchingly, what is AOSP device management? AOSP device management is kind of a combination and a culmination of a couple of different things all bundled together. AOSP stands for Android Open Source Project. This is the overarching open source project that exists across the entire Android estate, be it Android Teams products, be it an Android mobile device, be it a Samsung mobile phone, whatever it might be. Android Open Source Project is the overarching operating system that all of the Teams Android devices run today. With that, we are using AOSP device management, which is an Intune offering to do MDM manageability of the device. This was built by the Intune team to replace Android Device Administrator, which has been deprecated by Google and by the Android Open Source Project as a whole. We will be using AOSP device management instead as the replacement. This gives us the security wrapper. It also gives us an operating system manageability wrapper. So we can control different configuration settings on the device. We can check device compliance to make sure it's not rooted and make sure that there's not other challenges and other problems with the devices. We can do that with AOSP device management. Now, a lot of customers ask, hey, Microsoft, why aren't you guys using just Google Android Enterprise? Android Enterprise is what I use to manage my Samsung mobile phones or my HTC mobile phones or whatever they might be. Why can't you guys just use that? Overarchingly, it's because Google Android Enterprise requires Google mobile services be running on the Android devices. So you need the Google Play Store, you need some of the other Google services. Teams Android devices don't have those things. So Android Enterprise just doesn't work. In favor of that, instead, we're going to use AOSP device management. That gives us a wrapper that's entirely controlled by Microsoft, and we have that ownership there. From an overarching perspective, no license changes, no configuration changes on that side. Everything that's included with the Teams device licenses that you've got today, that includes Intune, also includes AOSP device management, so no change there. Also, this isn't MDEP. So if you've heard about MDEP, the Microsoft Device Ecosystem Platform, MDEP does run and use AOSP device management for its functionality, but this isn't MDEP. MDEP is a different conversation, kind of separate from all of this, where Microsoft is taking over some more ownership of the actual Android operating system side. And I kind of hit on a lot of this already, but why AOSP device management? Again, it's really just because it gives us the platform for future innovation. It gives us richer compliance management and security scenarios that aren't available on Device Administrator. And as Google and the Android Open Source Project have deprecated Device Administrator, we've actually lost functionality that we had in the past. As newer Android release builds have come out, we've actually started seeing losses of functionality from an MDM perspective. We needed something that was going to continue to grow and give us advancements in the future. With AOSP device management, we will have those opportunities. So then want to take an opportunity to kind of do deep dive of what is the actual architecture change here, what's actually happening. And so important to note first is kind of what does it look like today? And of course, I didn't fix the slide animations here. Every time I redo this deck, I change the slide animations slightly and move things around on it, and then I don't fix the slide animations. So in the current sign-in process today, there's really three different kind of underlying applications running on a Teams Android device. There's the overarching Teams app that's really the end user experience of the device, be it the meeting room product or the phone product or the panel product. There's an overarching app that provides the end user experience scenario, the login scenarios, things like that. That app then passes things off to other applications running in the background. Key being in the current device administrator mode is the company portal app. This application is what handles authentication and what handles enrollment into Intune. You'll also see that there's a Teams admin agent application running on the devices. This is actually what goes and talks to Teams Admin Center and reports back to Teams Admin Center on functionality, or hey, online, offline status, whatever it might be. And then there's the actual sign-in into Teams, and you can kind of see what that sign-in flow looks like and what's actually happening in the background as you go to sign in a new Teams Android device for the first time. Now, important to note, what you're going to see here is the company portal app, the Teams admin agent, and the Teams app, all as their own unique applications here. As we dive into the next set of applications, and again, there we go. So now, once we move to AOSP device management, there's a couple of changes that you're going to see here. No longer do we have that company portal app. We now have the Authenticator app. Same Authenticator app you run on your Android phone, your iOS phone, whatever it might be, to do those multi-factor authentication prompts. Same capability, same application running on the Teams Android devices. So you can go through and do that. That does the authentication steps. Same as the company portal app was doing before, just the Authenticator app is doing it instead. You're going to notice now, though, that there's a new application there, the AOSP app. This app is what's actually doing the Intune enrollment pieces. So as you go to enroll in Intune, the AOSP app itself does that enrollment, separate again from the company portal app that was doing it previously. Other than that, the rest of the functionality stays the same. So the Teams app, that is still the end user focused and user experience focused functionality, no change there from that side. The Teams admin agent doesn't change. That continues to talk to Teams Admin Center just like it did before. And then overarchingly, that sign into Teams continues to function the same way it did before. You sign in, you have the same Teams experience on the device. There is no end user functionality change. So overarchingly, just important to call out and important to notice here that the back-end applications are really what's changing. There's not a fundamental end user shift there from a functionality standpoint. And then just to help kind of understand what's actually included in a firmware update. So this whole migration is done as firmware updates. So we release a new firmware update. That new firmware update has the new Authenticator app and the new AOSP manageability agent running instead of the company portal app. This firmware comes as a bundle of applications. So you can see there, we've got the admin agent, we've got the Teams app, we've got the Authenticator app, and we've got the AOSP app. Those apps are all Microsoft authored, Microsoft written, and provided to your Teams Android device OEM as a, hey, this is the bundle of applications that you need to include in your firmware update. Then there's also the opportunity for OEMs to have their own OEM app. Maybe it talks to their own manageability. Maybe it allows us some interactions with the underlying operating system. There's kind of a series of different pieces there, but there's an OEM series of applications that may be running on the device. Also, all of that is bundled together into what we then call the firmware. That's then delivered through Teams Admin Center to your devices. Your devices pick up the new update, they deploy it to themselves. You then have an updated device and improved functionality on the device. So what does that migration process actually look like to go from company portal using Android Device Administrator as the enrollment to the Authenticator app using AOSP device management instead? From a migration perspective, there's a couple of changes that you have to do as an IT admin to make sure that the migration happens successfully. And I'm going to kind of talk through it in a generic sense, and then I'll walk through some very unique step-by-step bits as we get through this deck here. From the beginning, all that's really going to happen from a Teams admin perspective is you're going to deploy the new firmware onto the device. So you're going to go into Teams Admin Center, and you should see for the majority of your devices today an update available if you haven't deployed it already. That update will move your devices to AOSP device management. However, before you do that as the team's device admin, you need to make sure that whoever the Intune admin is for the organization has created a new AOSP enrollment profile. If you haven't created the enrollment profile and you try to do this migration, your device is going to sign out when you do that migration. So you're going to deploy the firmware to it. It's going to try to enroll with AOSP device management. It's going to be blocked because you don't have an enrollment profile there, and then suddenly things aren't going to work correctly. How do you fix that? You make sure first you've created your AOSP enrollment profile. You're also going to want to make sure, aligned to whatever your existing organizational conditional access requirements or configuration requirements are for Teams Android devices, you need to map those to the new AOSP enrollment profiles. That might mean just creating a compliance policy so that the devices come in and are marked compliant. That might be hey, I need to block certain things. I need to block if a device is rooted. I need to make sure that that's blocked and not able to sign in successfully in my org. Whatever those policies might be, you need to go through and do a mapping. If you did that for device administrator, you need to build those same policies again for AOSP device management. And then last but not least, once you've done all that mapping, then it's time to actually go through and update your devices. If you do all of the right prerequisites and meet all the prerequisites together, you can go through and make sure that things remain signed in. There's a question in the chat, is it mandatory to do step 2? You don't have to do step 2 if your organization doesn't require compliance or any configurations assigned to the device. If your organization requires a compliant device to sign in through a conditional access policy, if you don't build your compliance policy, your devices will sign out. So then, yes, it's mandatory, but from a Microsoft perspective, it's not. It's an organization config that you have to check throughout your organization to see what makes the most sense. Then, just pictorially, because I'm more of the visual learner here, is what does it actually look like as you go through the flow? So as you go through that flow there, you're going to see that the Intune admin goes and creates the new AOSP device management enrollment profiles and any configuration policies. Then as a Teams admin, the Teams admin goes and deploys that new firmware to the device. The device is going to download that firmware from TAC. The device is going to update and install the new apps from there, and then start rolling forward with devices. The device will reboot. It will unenroll from device administrator and re-enroll with AOSP device management. And then, assuming all goes well and everything's done and configured correctly, that device will remain signed in, fully migrated AOSP device management, fully enrolled again, and ready to use for an end user. Now, with this, there's a couple of gotchas and a couple of considerations here. So just making sure that you're aware of all of these. I'm doing this with PowerPoint Live, so hopefully everything's clickable for those watching live today. For those that are watching the recording afterwards, you can search for these links online and find them as well. And I'm sure we'll include them in the description too. But please, review our tech community article. So the tech community article and blog post has the exact dates that we're releasing the firmwares, the exact dates that these firmwares are switching to automatic updates, because we're on a rolling schedule for automatic updates as well. So May 15th is the start of automatic updates, but there is actually a phased approach to this. So May 15th, the first set of firmwares go to automatic updates. May 30th, the next set of firmwares go to automatic updates. June 15th, the next set of firmwares, and so on and so forth. So we are doing this in a phased approach, both to ensure that organizations have time to adapt, adopt, and try things, but also so that we can do this in a slow and controlled fashion to make sure that everything goes well. Also, this migration is intended to be completed without any user intervention. However, if your organization uses conditional access policies that require user interactive MFA after migration, the device is going to sign out. The reason for this being we can't get and retrieve an authentication token because there's an interruption in that sign-in flow. So if you have a device that you need to go through and access, if you're signing into a user's desk phone, the user's desk phone may sign out afterwards if there aren't conditional access policies providing exclusions or providing alternative methodologies for MFA. You need to make sure that those are ready to rock and roll, or just accept that they may sign out and you may have to sign them back in again. So business decision there and business choice there. But please, again, make sure that you know that as you go through these conversations. Also, if any of your devices are signed in using an account that's configured as a device enrollment manager account, you must remove that account as a device enrollment manager before you complete the migration. Otherwise, again, you won't migrate and you won't be able to enroll in AOSP device management. And then last caveat to a lot of this, and there's been lots of communication lately around DCF or device code flow. Folks didn't necessarily know what DCF was. Folks didn't necessarily know what a lot of this was in the past. What this really is the Microsoft.com/device login page. So the page that you can go to where the phone or the panel or the Teams room displays a code, and then on your laptop or some other device, you go to Microsoft.com/device login, you type in that code, and then you go through the authentication steps there, and then we pass that authentication token to whatever that secondary device is. That process has changed slightly. From a security perspective, user interactive MFA over DCF is no longer supported, so that has been removed. If you need to use user interactive MFA, totally acceptable, totally understand why. You need to do that from the phone itself. The authentication prompt will appear there. All will continue to function as you may see fit. But from a remote login perspective, if you leverage some different conditional access policies, you can work through ways to make it work where maybe it's no network location, maybe it's some device filters and some custom configs there. You can go through and build that configuration across for everything. But again, just important caveats to note and important things to know as you start looking at this. And then I've said this a whole bunch of times now, but I want to make sure we reinforce this across the board. Automatic updates start today. So if you have a AudioCodes phone or a Yealink phone starting May 15th, any devices that are in the validation update phase in Teams Admin Center will start picking up those updates between now and the end of the month. So anytime in the next 15 days, those devices will pick up automatic updates. They will start doing the automatic updates, and they will start going. Anything that is in the general ring of those phones will start picking up their updates May 31st through June 30th, let's call it. I might be off by a day. But we will follow, again, the automatic update phases and rings that you've configured in Teams Admin Center. And then last but not least, any devices that are in the final ring, maybe you've got some executive phones that you like delaying the updates on a little bit further, you can do that as well. Those updates will be delayed from there further back to the end of the deployment period. So please pay attention to what your device automatic update phases are. Please pay attention to where they're at. These updates are not pausable. The start timer is May 15th or whatever that date might be as listed in the blog.
Perfect, Matt. I do want to stop for a second and see if we can
Sure.
cover some of the other questions that have come in. Some of them have related to some of the things you're talking about. Some of them are a little out of scope, but I do want to hit something before we get too far and miss them. So one of the things that, so we talked about the automatic update, so I think we're good there. Actually, there was somebody else about a cutoff date for change to be implemented. I think that was answered as well. Oh, so somebody was saying, so Scott was saying that, they had no problems with any of these devices. Everything seems to be working fine. Does that mean my organization does not have any compliance conditional access set up? And he was referring to step 2 of that other slide that you were talking about specifically. Is it possible that they may not have some of those other pieces in place that's going to be like non-existent? And I think you kind of addressed that, but can you just reiterate?
Yeah, I mean, if you've successfully migrated devices without creating new compliance and configuration policies, then your organization doesn't require that. You'd want to review your conditional access policies in the organization or check Enter ID sign-in logs to make sure that you're making it through everything successfully. But if the migrations occurred, all's well there. You're very likely fine because otherwise conditional access would have blocked you somewhere along the way. But make sure you check with your Enter ID or conditional access admin to know for certain that you're configured in a desired state, or you may want to look at implementing those, again, depending on your security controls desired in your organization.
Yeah, and Matt, Gary asked a question. Similar behavior for Android MTRs, right?
Correct. Yeah, this is for Teams phones, Teams rooms on Android and Teams panels. So any Teams Android device.
Yep.
Awesome.
Just not the personal devices. It's really about those devices in that scenario. So somebody was also asking, and this is kind of a little bit out of the realm, but Alan was asking, so when all these Android devices get updated, will they eventually end up in the Pro portal?
So Teams rooms on Android devices and Teams panels today already show in the Pro Management portal if you've got a Pro license assigned or a shared device license assigned for your Teams panel. Those automatically show in the Pro Management Portal today. No immediate roadmap to share for Teams Phone.
Thank you. That's I wanted them to hear it from you as far as what's going on from that. So, looks like Andrew just threw something in. What was the past experience for the user MFA phone or prompt for phone sign in prior to the Microsoft managed DCFCA policy implementation?
So this is a fun one. So sort of unrelated to AOSP device management, but in flight from a security perspective, Microsoft has provisioned should be only a report only policy today, but it will flip to on in the future. A policy that blanket disables device code flow. So the ability to use or not use device code flow is purely controlled by that policy. So there are attack vectors that are used where a bad actor calls an end user and says, hey, type in this code on this page and I'm going to do whatever. And then in reality, it passes an auth token to that end user or from that end user's account to whatever that bad actor is, and they're able to act on behalf of that end user. So Microsoft has taken a stance to block that because for the majority of scenarios, you don't need device code flow, and you can always log in locally on the device as well. So that is separate from any MFA conversations, though. That policy either allows or disallows device code flow all up. You then just have to decide from an organization perspective, do you want to allow device code flow in certain scenarios to meet certain business needs to make it easier to sign in on phones or whatever it might be. But that policy is unrelated to AOSP device management.
Perfect. All right. I feel like that's all the ones that we have right now. So why don't you go ahead and continue on, and we'll pause if we need to. Thank you.
Sure. We'll keep rolling here. So going to keep rolling through kind of what does it actually look like from a configuration perspective. So for those that just want to know, what is your Intune admin doing? Or maybe you want to share this recording with your Intune admin, or maybe you're the Intune admin that's joined the call to learn today. The only piece that you absolutely have to do if you want the devices enrolled in Intune at all is create your AOSP device management enrollment profile. It's very easy to do. It's very easy. You go into Intune Admin Center, or I think it's just Intune Management Portal, whatever it might be called today. Go to Android, go to Enrollment, and then find the Android Open Source Project without Managed Google Services section. And then you're going to grab the corporate-owned user devices policy, and then you're going to go and you're going to select Create Profile. You're going to be presented with the option that you see here on the screen. You give that profile, enrollment profile, a name. Maybe it's Teams devices, maybe it's AOSP Teams devices, whatever makes sense from a configuration perspective. You can give it a description if you need to, so that other folks in the organization know what that policy is. You're going to be given the option to set an expiration for that enrollment token. This enrollment token is by default set to 65 years. Ideally, in 65 years, we're all talking about something else that is an AOSP device management. So that makes it really easy. You can create the enrollment token and just go. The only other piece that's important there is the for Teams devices. You're going to want to set that to yes and enabled. Otherwise, this policy won't work for Teams devices. So make sure that you set that to enabled. And then you can go through and hit next and hit save. That is going to create an enrollment policy and allow Teams Android devices to enroll with AOSP device management. Important to note here a couple of things. You can only have one Teams device AOSP enrollment profile in a tenant. So if you've created a policy in the past with a short expiration, say 30 days or something along those lines, and that policy, any existing devices that are enrolled will continue to function. So nothing breaks for any existing enrolled devices, but any net new sign-ins that would cause a new enrollment will fail. They will be blocked because there's no valid enrollment profile. So then what an Intune admin would need to do is go in and actually delete that old enrollment profile and create a new enrollment profile. The new enrollment profile would then allow net new devices to start enrolling and any other devices to re-enroll at next authentication. Gives you a lot of time to go through and do anything there. I would recommend you just set it to the 65 years because it makes your life easy, but different organizations can choose different things. That's why we make the customization available. Other really important piece to note. as you read the AOSP device management enrollment documentation kind of all up for any Android device, there's a lot of mention of QR code. So there's a QR code that you can scan and you can do this and it'll do the enrollment. That QR code was built for mobile devices and things like that to do the enrollment, not for Teams Android devices. Teams Android devices, by setting that checkbox, do not use the QR code. They have a special authenticator app that does a unique enrollment just for Teams Android devices. You don't need the QR code. You just sign in on the device. It will do the enrollment from there, and you're off to the races. I say this because I get the question all the time, what do I do with this QR code? Where's the QR code? Hey, my Teams phone doesn't have a camera on it. How do I do the enrollment in the QR codes? No, QR code's not required for this. Just sign in on the device and it will do the enrollment pieces. So you don't need the QR code. The QR code doesn't work. There is no intent or need there. Then these are the optional bits. And I'm going to say that a couple of times because every once in a while folks are like, hey, do I have to do this? I have to do this? No. These are optional, but they may be required in your organization based on what other policies are already set from an identity and conditional access perspective in your organization. So there are compliance policies and there are configuration policies that you need to do for various devices. So if you require devices to be marked compliant and Intune in order to sign in successfully and in order to enroll, you need to then assign an AOSP device management compliance policy. You can do there, you create a new compliance policy, you can assign it to all devices, and you can set different health factors. From a health factor perspective, generally this is blocking rooted devices, maybe it's a minimum Android OS operating system build, whatever it might be, you can go through and create those different things and see what's going on there. That makes this really easy, but again, just go through and make sure that you've set the correct compliance policies for your organization. And I think I actually removed the slides from here, but we also offer configuration policies too. If you want to do certain configurations on the device, maybe you want to block screen capture, maybe you want to block different configurations. We had a lot of customers that were getting confused and saying, well, Microsoft, you're requiring me to block screen capture. It's like, no, these are policies that you can deploy if your security profile and your security policy dictate that for your organization. So there are also configuration policies that you can do in AOSP device management that will then do and work through that as well. Last piece to this whole story is, hey, what devices are supported for AOSP device management? Answer is any currently certified device will receive the migration firmware for AOSP device management. So any device that's currently certified and currently supported by Microsoft is getting an AOSP device management firmware update. And you can see here the two different links that go off to explain for Teams rooms and for Teams phones, Teams panels, and Teams displays devices. Any devices that are not supported today. So there's a series of devices that are end of life from a certification perspective. They may still be functioning in some fashion. They may not function in some fashion, but device administrator is being deprecated all up from an Intune perspective. So any devices that are enrolled with device administrator, you will want to unenroll them from device administrator and use them as just Teams devices without an Intune license on the account. To do that, you need to remove the Intune license from whatever that resource account is that's signed in on that device. Wait for the 30-day grace period to expire from the Intune license, then go through and factory reset that device and sign back into Teams again. What this will do is sign it into Teams directly without Intune enrollment. That device will continue to function as a Teams device without the Intune manageability bits, without Intune compliance, without Intune configuration policies, until some other service deprecation causes that device to no longer function. But that device is then out of support from a Teams perspective and from a Microsoft perspective all up. This is the full list of Teams Android devices that are not supported for AOSP device management. Most of these phones are end of life or an end of support in some fashion or out of OEM support in some fashion as well. So you'll just want to make sure that you're aware, and if you have any devices in your organization that the Intune supportability for these devices is gone, there is still potentially, and some of these phones are still in our best effort support mode and some aren't. So from a Teams supportability perspective, there's a series of conversations there, but chat with your OEM, chat with your Microsoft reps and kind of what that looks like. Last piece before I just start taking open Q&A, because that's normally where folks get a lot of the value out of these conversations. Anyway, 2 really important links. There's the community blog. That blog has a Q&A, comment threads, details, step-by-step instructions, guidance, gotchas. We've tried to list everything in there, along with the timeline for every device and every firmware. Please roll through, make sure you've checked for your organization, and please make sure that you've then also followed the migration guide on Microsoft Learn to make sure that your organization is prepared and ready to go. With these 2 things combined together, my only call to action is make sure you've manually updated a couple of devices, tried the AOSP device management migration, gotten your environment into the right state so that when automatic updates start today, you're ready to rock and roll through it and you've got a positive and supported scenario for all of your devices as we move into the future. And with that, I'm going to pause, and I think there's a whole bunch of questions in the chat, so I'm going to roll through the questions in the chat first, and then if folks want to raise their hand, ask things like that, we can start walking through. So in the chat here, Troy asked, the move of the Authenticator application to Edge affect any of these processes? No, so there's no real change from a process perspective here. Everything else works, everything else continues to stay exactly the same. There's a question in the chat of, in order to delete an AOSP enrollment profile where the token is expired, you need to unhide. So yes, this one's not so much a question, so much as just, hey, if your AOSP enrollment profile expires, and I'll flip back to that slide here, when you create a profile, if that profile expires, the default list of all of the enrollment profiles in your tenant only shows active profiles. This is a little odd because it auto filters to that. You don't have to filter to it. It auto filters. To go find your expired policy, you need to remove that filter. Just to clarify, there are currently no plans for either a combined management portal or at least 2 portals with similar management features for phones and MTRs. Somewhat unrelated to this conversation, the Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal is our intended manageability place for Teams Rooms. Teams Phones are managed in Teams Admin Center today. Last comment in here was specifically looking for a robust alert management similar to MTR Pro. So there's the device state alert in Teams Admin Center that you could use for Teams Phones. For Teams Rooms, I would recommend the Pro Management Portal. And then last question here, where is the best place to look for Intune device errors? Kind of a couple of different places to look for device errors. I would start by really checking Entra ID sign-in logs. That tends to be the place that you catch most of the problems here. But outside of that, if you collect logs on the device itself, you can see everything from there as well.
Great questions coming in. Does anybody else have any questions you want to ask Matt directly? Please raise your hand. We've unmuted or given you the ability to unmute yourself, and you can ask Matt the question directly. But raise your hand first, please. We'd appreciate that.
No stumpers.
No one's got any questions?
No one?
Covered
Everybody is like an
everything?
expert now? You are so good,
There-
Matt. You,
there you go,
whoa. Hang on.
That's all it took.
Gary, I see you're ready to go. Gary, why don't you go ahead and ask Matt your question, man?
I was the one asking about the MTR Pro portal versus TAC for panels, devices, and phones. Specifically, what we're looking at is, I know in the Pro portal, I've noticed like a lot of enhancements have been made over the however long, and so I can a lot of robust features for turning on the types of alerts, as well as being able to group put devices, MTRs, into groups. So as a global company, if we have folks that need to be receive those alerts, certain ones, right? And you have a whole list of signal alerts that you can turn on, disable, enable, and it can go to a group that's for these people, and then these devices are in another group that go for alerts, and that's what I'm looking for the phones, panels, displays in the TAC, even if we can't have a combined portal. So that's kind of what I was asking. Is there any plans to make that type of robust alert management available in TAC?
Depends a little. So for Teams rooms and Teams panels, the Pro Management Portal is really the right way to do that. So then it really comes down to Teams
Yeah,
phone
yeah.
and Teams
Right.
display to an extent, while those are still supported. From a Teams phone perspective, the device state alert in TAC is really about as close as you'd get to that. What I have a lot of customers do is they end up dropping that into a Teams chat somewhere or into a Teams team, so that they can get alerts and tag different folks and build workflows to tag different folks based on maybe a naming scheme or a tag on the device. That's really kind of where I see folks at today with it, though. I can't comment on future roadmap at the moment, though.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Randy, why don't you come off mute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, so I've had a ticket open for a couple weeks now after the latest release of the firmware from Poly and the latest Teams app update. And I've been testing the updates and have been having sign-in issues ever since with AOSP. I guess we first realized that my device limit on Entra was reached the max. That has been cleared now. The current issue that we've been having is now that it requires, so when we do the DCF login process, instead of it actually completing the process, it then goes to a screen that says type in your UPN, and it doesn't actually complete the login. But once I put my UPN in, login completes and goes through. We checked sign-in logs at the Azure level, and it does say single factor auth or MFA is being claim the MFA requirement is being satisfied by claiming the token. So it seems like from an Azure standpoint, it seems like it's fine, but for some reason the auth just does not continue to log in unless you do that on phone login. Is there anything else we can look at that might be able to find where the issue could be?
What are you using as your identity provider today in Entra ID? Is it Azure AD or are
Azure
you
AD,
using
yeah.
some federated identity provider?
Azure AD.
It's a little strange then. Do you have sign-in frequency set as a policy, perhaps? There's probably something else that's catching because if you're not enforcing user interactive MFA on that sign-in attempt, then you shouldn't see a need to type in the UPN on the phone and go through, because the only reason you need to type in the UPN on the phone or do anything on the phone is if you've tried DCF and then there's some pause and interruption waiting in the sign-in flow. So there's something else wonky going on there.
Well, one thing that we do see in that sign-in flow is that it starts with a failure and then a success right afterwards. So and that's what we've noticed that in all of our sign-ins is it starts with a failure and then a success right afterwards. So I'm not sure if that's the interruption that it's seeing and that's what's causing it
Most
to
likely.
not log in. Okay.
Yeah, and there's some failure that's doing some deny in the sign-in process that's causing the pause. So yeah, I would keep working through the support case. It sounds like you're on the right path though, and you've got the right folks working on it.
Okay.
Excellent. I don't know if you take a look at the the chat, but it looks like we have Darren has been asking a couple questions. As a device manager, Teams device manager, what level of Intune and Intra role should I have to be able to debug device errors? And then you have a follow-up too, but start there.
Yeah, I mean, so as a Teams device manager, I would start by making sure you have the Teams device manager role for accessing Teams Admin Center and seeing your Teams devices. And then second would be some level of reader role that gives you access to Entra ID sign-in logs. And there's a couple of different ones kind of based on what your organization may want to allow or not. For most folks, I generally encourage the global reader role because it allows you to see both the Entra ID sign-in logs, but it also gives you visibility into what the Intune configuration looks like. So you can actually go and see it. You can't modify it, you can't mess with it, but at least then you can do the double check of like, oh, what did my Intune admin configure this matching Microsoft's best practices? Let me go take a look at what's configured there. I would generally coach towards some Teams level admin role and then the global reader role so that you can see the configurations. It also then gives you visibility to Entry ID sign-in logs so you can actually walk through and see, oh, here's the conditional access denied that I'm getting. Why am I getting denied? And then you can open that and then you can see, oh, the failure is on policy XYZ. Policy XYZ is requiring that this device be running Android 12. My device is running Android 10. That's why I'm getting blocked. And you can kind of work through all of those. So that would generally be what I would encourage from that side. And then all of these debugging questions being asked require a certain level of access to our Intune and Entry ID folks have not been greeted to us. So kind of similar conversation there. I would start with the ask to global reader. If they don't want to give you global reader, there's a couple of sub reader roles that could give you some level of access. But for most folks, I've had really good luck having the conversation of like, whatever the team's device admin role is, or the team's admin role that makes sense for your role. If it's just devices, cool, just the team's device admin role. Maybe you manage other parts of teams as well, so maybe a stronger role there makes sense. And then above and beyond that, a reader role of some sort.
Perfect. I'm not seeing much else in the chat, and nobody else has raised their hand, so I'm going to assume that everybody is ready to go with AOSP updates. Right, Matt?
I hope so. I mean, hey,
oh, of course,
we've got a couple 100,000 devices rolling, so
yeah, exactly. I mean,
we've had people do this with success.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a few of my customers that have been very successful and have not had any issues as they've gone through that process too. So, but again, it's really all about, you know, what have you guys done inside Intune and those compliance policies that you have there that may be causing some of this issues that you have too. So, absolutely.
Tim, what's on your mind?
So yeah, so this has been successful so far. We did get the Intune team to add the profile, which was good. We have a little over 1,000 devices. I suppose maybe about 1,100. It's been good. We've been continuing keeping up the updates. Having the auto updates off has been really helpful because we've been able to phase it and test it. Where I'm running into difficulty, which I'm really glad that we have this phased approach through June 28th, is I think I've ran into, I would say, I'm up to about 25 devices, and it's been a combination of phones and Teams room devices where updates are failing. And that is one caution that I would throw out to anybody else. Unsolicited advice is those devices that you find after you get through everything updated on AOSP that are failing, those are the things you want to get after right away. Because what I'm finding is when phones were deployed, say 2 years ago, someone didn't update the firmware. And we didn't know that it was failing over the last 24 months. And you're seeing grins from the Microsoft folks because they see and understand what I'm saying. So what I'm having to do now is we have Yealink devices. I'm going to Yealink's website, opening up tickets with them, and having to stair step through. I kid you not. A gig download, a gig upload of the dang phone, sorry. But it's annoying because I'm having to do it like 4 different times over 25 different devices. It's not a fast process. So that'd be the only thing that I would say as a snag that we ran into. But otherwise, other than working with the Intune team to understand if we will use conditional access, I'm going to push for it because I think it's important that we do it. And it would be nice to get at least read-only access to Intune, but right now we don't have that. So anyways, that's my take.
Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Joe did mention, and I think to what Tim was saying, and Joe is also saying too, is if you're running into issues too, make sure you're reaching out to not only Microsoft support, but also that device support, just to make sure that things are good on the firmware side and that stuff is getting updated correctly too, with the right apps. All right. All right. Nothing else. I think now we can call it good, Matt.
Sweet. Hey, yeah.
Thank you.
No, and I'm glad. That means that I think most of the folks on this call have at least tried it in some fashion and have had success. So that's awesome. Really looking forward to seeing everybody move all of their devices to AOSP device management, and I really appreciate the community's support in getting there. This has been a bit of an adventure, but hopefully we've made this in a way that it's quite seamless for everyone.
Perfect.
Thanks. Great
Thank you.
presentation.